Some moments define a life. For Guard Sergeant Mitchell, it wasn't his military cross or his 3 combat tours. It was the day he knelt beside a wheelchair and remembered why he became a soldier in the first place. For 7-year-old Oliver, it was the day a statue in red became the hero who taught him to walk again. Before we witness this incredible moment that changed 2 lives forever, comment below where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button. The Tuesday morning fog hung thick over Buckingham Palace, muffling the sounds of early London traffic. Sergeant Marcus Mitchell, standing at his post by the main gates, had already been on duty for 2 hours. At 34, his 6'3" frame cut an imposing figure in the scarlet tunic and bearskin cap. The scars hidden beneath his uniform told stories of Helmand Province, of nights when being a soldier meant more than ceremony. But today's battle would be different. The first sign of change came with the sound of wheelchair wheels on cobblestones. Mitchell's peripheral vision, honed by years of combat awareness, caught the small convoy approaching. A young boy in a pediatric wheelchair, pushed by exhausted-looking parents, followed by what appeared to be a medical aide carrying oxygen equipment. "Not too close, Oliver," the mother said, her voice carrying the weight of 1,000 hospital visits. "Remember what we discussed. We can look, but the guards have important work." Oliver Thompson didn't respond verbally. He couldn't. Not easily. The brain tumor that had stolen his ability to walk at age 3 had also affected his speech. But his eyes, bright blue and startlingly alert, fixed on Mitchell with an intensity that penetrated the guard's trained stillness. The boy was small for 7, his Yankees baseball cap unable to hide the surgical scars on his skull. His legs, thin beneath his Star Wars blanket, hadn't moved voluntarily in 4 years. Doctors at Great Ormond Street Hospital had been honest with the Thompsons. The damage to Oliver's motor cortex was extensive. Walking again was, in their professional opinion, impossible. "Look, Ollie," his father said, kneeling beside the wheelchair. "See how still he stands? That's discipline. That's strength." But Oliver wasn't looking at the stillness. His eyes had found something else, the Invictus Games pin on Mitchell's uniform, barely visible among his other decorations. The boy's thin hand emerged from beneath his blanket, pointing with effort. Ich ... Oliver struggled with the word, frustration creasing his face. His mother stepped forward. "He's trying to say Invictus." He watched it on television, the games for wounded soldiers. "He's obsessed with..." She paused, swallowing hard. "With people who learn to walk again." Mitchell's jaw tightened imperceptibly. The Invictus Games, Prince Harry's adaptive sports competition for wounded veterans. Mitchell had volunteered there, had watched men and women missing limbs sprint on prosthetics, had seen wheelchairs racing at speeds that defied limitation. He'd been there not as a guard, but as a man who understood what it meant to rebuild a body the world had written off. Oliver's hand moved again, this time toward his own legs. Then, back to Mitchell. The gesture was clear. "You help them. Help me." "Oliver, no," his father said quickly. "The guard can't..." But something in Mitchell's chest had already cracked. Behind his trained stillness, memories flooded. His own months in rehabilitation after an IED in Afghanistan, doctors telling him he'd never run again, the grinding determination that proved them wrong. He saw himself in this boy's eyes, not the uniform, not the ceremony, but the refusal to accept defeat. That's when Oliver did something that would change everything. With tremendous effort, the boy pushed himself forward in his wheelchair, his weak arms shaking. He moved inch by inch until he was directly in front of Mitchell. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper but clear as crystal, he spoke 5 words that shattered 15 years of protocol. "Please, teach me to stand." The crowd of tourists, which had grown larger as they sensed something unusual happening, fell silent. Parents pulled out phones, sensing a moment worth capturing. But none of them expected what happened next. Mitchell moved, not the sharp ceremonial movement of the changing of the guard, but something infinitely more human. He slowly turned his head, looking down at Oliver. Their eyes met, soldier to soldier, warrior to warrior. "Sergeant Mitchell!" The sharp voice belonged to Corporal Davies, another guard positioned 30 feet away. "Protocol!" But Mitchell had already made his decision. In one fluid motion, he set his rifle carefully against the palace wall and dropped to one knee beside Oliver's wheelchair. The gasps from the crowd were audible. "What's your name, soldier?" Mitchell asked, his deep voice gentle but carrying the authority of someone used to command. Oliver's eyes widened. The guard had spoken. To him. "Oh, Oliver, sir? Oliver?" Mitchell nodded seriously. I see you've been watching the Invictus Games. You know what Invictus means? The boy shook his head. It means unconquered, undefeated. Mitchell's eyes flicked to Oliver's legs, then back to his face. I bet you understand that better than most. Sarah Thompson, Oliver's mother, pressed her hand to her mouth. Sergeant, you don't have to. Your job. Ma'am, Mitchell interrupted gently. With respect, I've never been more clear about my job than I am right now. He turned back to Oliver. You said you want to stand? Oliver nodded frantically. Then we start with believing it's possible. Can you do that? Another nod, more forceful this time. Mitchell glanced at the growing crowd, spotted the medical aide with the equipment. Ma'am, the oxygen. Is he stable without it? For short periods? Yes, the aide stammered, shocked to be addressed by a guard. Good. Mitchell looked back at Oliver. Standing starts in the mind, soldier. Your legs remember how to work. They just need reminding. I learned that in my own rehab. You trust me? Yes, Oliver breathed. What happened next would be shared in videos around the world, but no camera could truly capture the moment's power. Mitchell positioned himself in front of the wheelchair, his large hands outstretched. Take my hands, he instructed. Grip as hard as you can. Don't worry about hurting me. I've been through worse. Oliver's thin fingers wrapped around Mitchell's scarred hands. The contrast was stark, the child's pale, fragile grip against the guardsman's weathered strength. Now, Mitchell said, I want you to think about standing. Don't try yet. Just think. Remember what it felt like. Picture your feet on the ground, your legs holding you up. Behind them, Corporal Davies had abandoned his post, moving closer with a mixture of horror and awe. Palace security was already converging, but something in the scene made them pause. The crowd had formed a respectful circle, phones recording but voices hushed. I can't, Oliver whispered, tears forming. The doctor said, Doctors say lots of things, Mitchell interrupted. They told me I'd never run again after Afghanistan. Want to know a secret? He leaned closer. I ran 5 miles this morning. Oliver's grip tightened. When I count to 3, Mitchell continued, you're going to pull. I'll support you, but the effort comes from you. And Oliver, you already know you can do this. You wouldn't have asked if you didn't believe it somewhere deep down. The boy's parents stood frozen, his mother gripping his father's arm so tightly her knuckles were white. The medical aide had moved closer, ready to intervene if needed. The crowd held its collective breath. 1, Mitchell counted. Remember, you're unconquered. 2, picture yourself standing. Feel the ground beneath you. 3, now soldier, pull. Oliver pulled. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, almost imperceptibly, the boy's body shifted forward. His legs, dormant for 4 years, trembled. Mitchell held steady, his strength absolute, but his touch gentle, letting Oliver do the work. That's it, he encouraged. Feel that? Your legs remember. They've been waiting. And then, Oliver's feet touched the ground. He wasn't standing, not fully, but his feet were flat on the cobblestones, bearing a fraction of his weight for the first time in 4 years. The crowd gasped. Sarah Thompson let out a sob. I feel them, Oliver cried out. Mummy, I feel my legs. Hold on, Mitchell said firmly. We're not done. On my count, you're going to push. Use my hands for balance, but the push comes from your legs. Ready? Oliver nodded, tears streaming down his face, but his expression fierce with determination. 1, 2, 3, push! The impossible happened. Oliver Thompson stood. Not steadily, not for long, maybe 3 seconds before his legs buckled. But he stood. Mitchell caught him smoothly, lowering him back to his wheelchair with practiced care. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Sarah Thompson fell to her knees beside her son, sobbing openly. Oliver's father stood in stunned silence, tears running unchecked down his face. You did it, Mitchell said quietly to Oliver. You stood, and if you can do it once, I can do it again, Oliver finished, his voice stronger than it had been in years. That's when Palace security finally intervened. 2 officers approached Mitchell, their faces a mixture of sympathy and duty. Sergeant Mitchell, you'll need to come with us. Mitchell nodded, unsurprised. He'd known the consequences when he made his choice. As he stood, Oliver grabbed his hand one more time. Will I see you again? The boy asked. Mitchell glanced at the security officers. then back at Oliver. "Can't promise that, soldier. But I can promise this. You don't need me. You've got everything you need right here." He tapped Oliver's chest over his heart. "Invictus, remember?" As Mitchell was led away, the crowd began chanting, "Let him stay! Let him stay!" But the most powerful voice came from Oliver himself. As Mitchell reached the palace gates, the boy called out with a strength that surprised everyone. "Thank you for reminding me I'm unconquered." Mitchell turned back, broke protocol one last time, and saluted. A real salute, not ceremonial, but soldier to soldier. Oliver, still in his wheelchair but somehow taller than before, returned it. The videos went viral within hours, unconquered Oliver trending worldwide. News outlets scrambled for interviews. The palace faced a public relations crisis: discipline a hero or embrace the moment. But the real story unfolded over the following weeks. Inspired by Mitchell's words and his 3 seconds of standing, Oliver threw himself into physical therapy with renewed determination. His doctors, while maintaining medical skepticism, couldn't deny the sudden improvement in muscle response. The boy who hadn't walked in 4 years was suddenly fighting to stand daily. Mitchell faced a disciplinary hearing. His commanding officer, Colonel Richardson, was a veteran of 3 wars and not given to sentiment. But even he was moved by the footage. "Sergeant Mitchell," Richardson said gravely, "you violated 15 separate protocols. You abandoned your post, engaged with civilians, and created an international incident." "Yes, sir." "You also," Richardson continued, his voice softening slightly, "reminded the world why we serve. The palace has received over 100,000 messages of support. The Prime Minister himself called to discuss your case." The compromise was unprecedented. Mitchell received an official reprimand for the protocol violations, which would remain on his record, but was also awarded a special commendation for exemplifying the highest ideals of service. He was reassigned from ceremonial duty to a new role: liaison for the Invictus Games and veteran rehabilitation programs. 6 months later, at the opening ceremony of the Invictus Games, a surprise guest appeared. Oliver Thompson, using leg braces and crutches but standing on his own power, walked onto the stage. The crowd of wounded veterans and their families rose as one in a standing ovation. Mitchell, in his new role, stood at attention in the wings. Oliver spotted him and, with painful but determined steps, made his way over. This time, when they met, both were standing. "Still unconquered," Oliver said simply. "Never doubted it," Mitchell replied. The boy who doctors said would never walk again went on to become the youngest participant in the Junior Adaptive Sports Program. His progress defied medical explanation, but Oliver had his own theory. Sometimes, all it takes is one person believing in you at the right moment. Mitchell continued his work with wounded veterans and disabled children, bringing the same unwavering belief to each encounter. He never returned to ceremonial guard duty, but he'd found something more meaningful: a way to serve that went beyond standing still. The palace wall where Mitchell had broken protocol now bears a small plaque, unofficial but undisturbed. On this spot, a guard remembered that true strength isn't about standing still. It's about knowing when to move. And Oliver? He kept his promise. He didn't just stand again. He soared. Sometimes the greatest acts of service require breaking the rules. Sometimes a uniform is just fabric until the person wearing it remembers why they put it on. And sometimes a moment of human connection can achieve what medical science calls impossible. In the end, Sergeant Marcus Mitchell lost his position as a ceremonial guard, but found his purpose as a true guardian. And 7-year-old Oliver Thompson lost his wheelchair, but found his wings. Both learned that unconquered isn't about never falling. It's about always getting back up. What would you have done in Sergeant Mitchell's position? Would you have maintained protocol or chosen compassion? This story reminds us that sometimes the greatest acts of courage happen not on battlefields, but in quiet moments of human connection. If Oliver's journey inspired you, please share this video with someone who needs a reminder that they're unconquered. Like this video if you believe in the power of believing in others, and subscribe to our channel for more incredible stories of royal guards who prove that honor isn't about following rules. It's about knowing when to break them for the right reasons. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our weekly stories of extraordinary moments at Buckingham Palace. And remember, you're never too broken to stand again, and you're never too important to kneel for someone who needs help. See you in the next video, where where we'll share another remarkable story that will restore your faith in humanity.